That's a
I
good
like
point.
that.
Good call. All right, the Texans lost a close one to the Packers on Sunday. C.J. Stroud had his worst game of the season in Green Bay. He completed just 48% of his passes and averaged just over 4 yards per attempt. His QBR 22, down 44 points from his season average entering the day. Graz, you were at the game. What went wrong for the Texans?
Well, they didn't handle pressure well from the Green Bay Packers, and it's a concern talking to Texans people after the game because they saw a lot of the same problems that they saw earlier in the season when they lost to Minnesota. That was the other game this year in which C.J. Stroud had a QBR in the 20s, and the issue is disguised pressures. He and they are not picking up on them. You see, he struggled against the blitz, obviously, but also even when they weren't blitzing, when they're sending four, it's a matter of identifying which four. It gave them fits against the Vikings, it gave them fits against the Packers, and they know they have to fix it because other teams are going to start doing it if they can't stop it.
Yeah, let's bring Marcus in here. And Marcus, show us what that Packers defense threw at Stroud that made it so tough.
Yeah, I love what Hafley is doing. Jeff Hafley, the defense coordinator from Green Bay. This is now a defense that wants to dictate and put you in bad situations. Here you see the 2 A-gap pressure with the linebacker, but they use the center and Kenny Clark in this particular situation. It's a pick on the guard by the linebacker, Eric Wilson, who's stepping in for Quay Walker and being highly productive. They get the CJ there. The next down, they decide we will attack the center with both of the linebackers. Walk them up in the A-gap. See the back get confused thinking that he has 56 as opposed to taking the rapper who is 45. So now you got 2-on-1 and it's a problem for this protection up front. Now, on one hand, we could say, well, the Houston Texans need to be better, right? Obviously. On the other hand, this defensive coordinator and the way these guys are executing these inside stunts and the way that he's bringing pressure directly in the face of the quarterback. And don't think for 1 second, the scouting report from the Minnesota game, and Dan and Hawk knows this, was to get interior pressure against C.J. Stroud immediately. It is one of those things with quarterbacks like him who does play with a lot of timing and rhythm and operates really well from inside the pocket. It's how you disrupt them, and Green Bay followed that plan that Flores put out and made it happen against him, man.
Yeah, the Packers have an NFL high 17 takeaways this season. That's 3 more than the next closest team.
Aggressive.
And talk a little bit more about the Packers offense.
All right. Well, no, we're talking about the Texans. Okay. So listen, there is a lot of wild takes going around here about the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud. It's kind of driving me a little crazy. People trying to act like CJ Stroud is not good now. People trying to act like CJ Stroud is in a sophomore slump or now that they have tape on him. And it's just nonsense for many reasons. And when a quarterback is not doing well with the blitz, I don't want to actually put it on the quarterback. When I know that the quarterback has clearly demonstrated that he can process the game, make the correct reads, right? Like, if he was just overwhelmed within the game and the blitz overwhelms him, then I would say, okay. And sometimes the blitz is just a kryptonite for a quarterback. But to me, there's no evidence of that for CJ Stroud. And so when there's no evidence for that, it's okay. So then what is kind of the problem? And then that becomes your offensive coordinator. And I think Bobby Slowick is a great offensive coordinator. So I'm not just trying to blame him and be like, oh, he's terrible. He's this awful coordinator. What is he doing? But I don't think that they're doing a good enough job right now to be able to support CJ Stroud in this situation, right? Like you see, right? He was pressured 13 of 29 dropbacks, 4 sacks, right? 2 for 6, 13 yards. That's obviously not good. But I don't just blame it on CJ Stroud just not being good enough, right? That's kind of where I draw that line out. Again, this was obviously not a good game. 10 for 21, 86 yards, 58 rating, 0 touchdowns, 4 yards per attempt. Obviously not good at all. But it's such a bizarre game to kind of unpack. I've been struggling to unpack this game, honestly, because the score was 22-24. It took a last second field goal to win this game, and yet you have your quarterback who's playing awful, and I don't even want to say that he individually played awful, but obviously the box score is the box score, and yet, and you force 3 turnovers, right, from the Packers, and yet it was still a close game. Like when a game is this messy and this kind of like all over the place like this, I find it fascinating, right? Because if I told you CJ Stroud was going to go 10 for 21 and 86 yards against the Packers, what do you think the score is going to be? You're going to be like, oh man, 24-0, right? Packers. And it's like, no, man, you almost won this game, right? And if I told you were going to force 3 turnovers from the Packers, what's this game going to look like? You're going to be like, oh man, Texans going to dominate here. 3 takeaways in the first half. Let's go. And that wasn't the story. So what that signals to me is a few things, actually. You need to see the Texans become more opportunistic, right? When they get these takeaways, when they get short field position, when they get in a position to really go up bigger, which then allows your defense to be more aggressive, they got to be able to do it, right? You got to be able to convert these touchdowns. You got to be able to take bigger leads, right? I mean, again, when you're given some of these gifts, you got to be able to take advantage of it. But right now, it feels like the Texans are getting a gift, and they're like, "Oh, this is pretty cool," and they just kind of put it to the side. They don't even really open it. They look at the back of the box and like read the write up about it, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool. I'll like this one day," and they put it to the side. And then it's like months later, and they're like, "Oh my God, I forgot about this." They're like, "Oh, is it still good? It's a little dusty." And so the Texans need to become more opportunistic, is the way I see it. Especially if you're going to face a team like the Packers. And again, think about what you're going to be going up against. Because again, when I look at the Texans, I'm thinking playoffs. So it's like you're going up against the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills, potentially the Steelers, right? Like that's what you're going up against. And then, of course, if you can make it through there, then the Super Bowl, and then it's like, then you're going up against the Lions, the Vikings. So when you have the opportunity to take advantage of a gift or weakness of the other team, the Texans right now, currently, as they're playing right now, they're not dominant enough, or they're not playing at a high enough level. And again, we can blame injuries and all that. That's totally fair. But I'm just talking about right now. You have to take advantage of those opportunities. You have to. It's how the Chiefs are continuing to win. They're taking advantage. They're taking advantage of those opportunities when given to them. And when they make their own mistakes, they do everything they can to minimize the repercussions from them. But yeah, if you are the Ravens right now, if you are the Lions, you can get away with coughing the ball. You can get away with not putting points on the board after, getting the ball on the 50-yard line, right? You can get away with that because you're just operating at such a higher level. That's kind of the difference. The Texans are not operating at that level right now. And for the most part, they haven't been all season. And it's what I've been pointing out all season. It's okay, you got to win here. This was good, but it's not clean enough. It's not good enough right now. If you think about it this way, this game, even though they did not play good, if they were able to clean up a few things here and there, they win this game and they get away with the victory, despite them not really playing all that well, despite CJ Stroud not having a great game, obviously. So that's what the Texans have to figure out. How can they do this? How can they put CJ Stroud in a position to succeed? Because I feel like, and this is what Dan Orlovsky said before, he said this actually before this game was ever played for the for the Texans versus Packers. He said that he feels that CJ Stroud is a top quarterback in the NFL, top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and that he is masking a lot of the issues that the Texans have right now, especially with Nico Collins. And this is where you have to look to Andy Reid more than anything. And I'm going to show you in 1 second. Okay, so here we go. We got average depth of target, right? So intended air yards per pass attempt. Average depth of target, whether completed or not. All right. I have it, from the most to the least. Now, Anthony Richardson, we can kind of throw that away a little bit because it's like, he's kind of all over the place. But when you look at this, you can see Brock Purdy's near the top, Trevor Lawrence, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Joe Flacco, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, and we can see CJ Stroud. And again, it's I don't lose too much sleep when we're talking about from 7.7 to 8.8, right? Like a yard here or there, it's within range. So he's near the top essentially, right? Even though he's 17th, he's essentially near the top because when you look at the distribution, it really 9 is pretty high, but the vast majority are going to be in the mid 8s all the way to the 7s, right? That's where the bulk, if it was like a bell-shaped curve, like the bulk of all of this is there. So CJ Stroud is right there in the middle. But when you don't have the pieces around you, this is what you want to do in average depth of target. Look at how low Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are. 5.6, okay? Right there, 5.6. So what does that signal to you? Because now, look at this, Patrick Mahomes, 5.6. But now, if we go to yards after catch, look at this. He shoots up to 5. Shoots up. So it's one of those things where Andy Reid is consistently, and again, Andy Reid's like the GOAT, man. But he consistently puts his team and his quarterback in a position to succeed, to throw these short little passes and get top yards. I mean, it's pretty wild when you think about it. It really, really is. And again, it's not like CJ Stroud and the Texans are doing awful here, right? They're also kind of within range. They are top 10. But it's still one of those issues because you've got to do a better job of supporting your 23-year-old quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is 29. Patrick Mahomes has been around the block once or twice. And when we can look at some of these other quarterbacks, right, we can see that, 27, 28, 29, right? These are guys that have been around. Dak Prescott, 31, right? You got to do a better job of supporting CJ Stroud in this regard, right? They're kind of asking him to do too much. And you can see that in a lot of these games, right? You can see that when a quarterback is dropping back and there's just nowhere for him to go and they're trying to force it down the field, or you ever see, right, it's either one of those sideline throws where it's just like they were never going to make it and it kind of just goes out of bounds, or it's one of those like, it feels like you're watching a game and every throw feels like it's constantly contested, right? Every catch, it just goes right to the receiver and then it just kind of gets batted down or broken up, or it's like, he could have caught that, but it would have been a pretty nice catch, right? A hard physical catch. That's what feels like's happening with CJ Stroud all the time. And I know their run game has been inconsistent, and their run game was actually surprisingly pretty decent against the Packers, considering that they have a top run defense. But what to me this comes down to is how can they do a better job of supporting CJ Stroud, right? That's what it ultimately comes down to me, because it's just the average depth of target considering what they're working with right now. And remember, some of that is inflated because that was when they had Nico, right? Don't. So you have to be more strategic. You have to put CJ Stroud in a position to be able to succeed, because if you do that, he will be able to do it with flying colors. He absolutely will be able to with flying colors. But to have him at this top right now, when he clearly does not have the pieces to be able to make that happen, or even the play design to make it happen, quite frankly. Like, whether you want to blame the pieces or just a play, or just a game plan or the play design, that's fine. But that's where I'm kind of looking at it from this perspective right now. When you're down by Nico, you're down Nico, so you don't have these big plays. You're not really able to open the field in the way that you would have been able to with him. So you have to be more strategic. And I don't feel as though they have been. And that's why we get a game that's 10 for 21, 86 yards, a 58 rating, right? Like that, to me, that is what we get. And again, to be clear, as you guys know, I railed on Patrick Mahomes and for also having this, because everyone's trying to act like Patrick Mahomes is being carried, or know that Patrick Mahomes is carrying his team. When in reality, you look at this and this is proof. No. His team is carrying him because he's been playing awful, right? He's not been playing good at all. But you have a great defense with the Chiefs, and you have a great play caller and head coach in Andy Reid. You can do this, and you could be undefeated, right? Like that's the difference. So I don't think enough coaches do a good enough job to support their quarterback. And again, this isn't meant to rail on what the Texans are doing offensively or what Bobby Slowick is doing. But I do think at the end of the day, they need to do more to support him, right? At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to more than me, right? I'm not looking at just the personnel or just CJ Stroud itself, the general defense, the general offense, the general special teams. They need to do a better job, because in the offseason, they definitely did. They got the pieces, right? They went out and got the pieces, and I praised them and said, hey, you're supporting CJ Stroud. That's awesome, right? Let's go. But when I see certain things like 2 for 6 and 4 sacks against a blitz, right? Like all this type of stuff, those are kind of like signals to me. And I'm like, okay, well, let me try to take a little bit deeper and a deeper look at this. And I'm like, man, like what are they trying to do? It feels like that they're trying to force, rather than take what the defense is giving them, and rather than understanding what their football team can do in any given moment, it seems like they're trying to force a rigid game plan and a rigid philosophy rather than what best fits the game and what best fits their team right now, currently, right? Not what they're hoping to achieve, not what they think they'll have when Nico's back, not what they thought before they ever played a game together were going to happen, right? That's what they need to do. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Houston Texans? What do you think they need to do to kind of be able to, regain momentum, kind of take another step forward? Is it just a matter of health? Is it CJ? Is it coaching? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.